You're watching Friggin' Fabulous Video.
All right, I'm here with the King of Nostalgia, Joe Franklin, in his world-famous Manhattan office.
And buried around here, Nick, is Rudolph Valentino's coffee mug from 1926. Another Rudy Valley's megaphone from 1931, and Eddie Cantor's banjo, and it's fun. It's a way of life.
It's a way of life, and it's an amazing. It's like a museum in here, Joe. I mean, the amount of nostalgia and memorabilia. It's actually amazing. You have your Bob Hope with Milton Berle poster up there.
I got so many people that want to buy my stuff, and I'm so tempted because I know that I'm not going to be around more than another 200 years. But still, I don't want to part with it. I'm so emotionally involved. I'm so attached to my stuff. I hate to sell it. You know what I mean? I've been
Understood.
All kind of offers from all over the world, museums, universities, but I'm clinging to it. I'll go down with it someday.
Let's go back to the beginning, Joe. You actually started out in radio when you were young, correct?
I had my own radio show when I was 15 years old.
Wow.
And I called it Vaudeville Isn't Dead. And you wouldn't believe it. The other day somebody brought me a brand new CD called 1926, and on there, one of the selections was a song called Valencia, which was my theme song. And when I began the radio on WNEW way back, so brought back such a thrill. When I played it then, it was an old song, but to hear it now, 52 years later, it's a kick.
It's amazing. And you go back to the days of Martin Block and the make-believe ballroom and all that stuff.
I was sitting around waiting for Marconi to invent the tube. That's how far back I go. And Martin Block was my first boss, and I chose his records for his very popular show, as you said, the make-believe ballroom. And he just liked me as a person. He said, "Joe, you got a pretty interesting voice. You got me my own radio show on that station," and it just never stopped. It spiraled from there on.
How did you transition from radio to television? How did that come about?
I was just happily doing my little Vaudeville Isn't Dead radio show every night. In fact, I was on WHOM before I went to WNEW, and my salary then was $0. So one day I get a phone call from Ted Cott. He was the program manager at WNEW. He said, "Joe, I heard you on the radio. You sound good. We'll give you double." So I had to think fast. I can't tell I'm getting $0, so I just lied. I said, "I'm getting $15 a show, Mr. Cott." He said, "You're going to get $30 a show." And that was my transition from WHOM to WNEW. And then after a little while on WNEW, I got a phone call one day from Channel 7. It was then called WJZ TV. Now it's WABC TV. And they said,
Right.
"We're lighting up in the daytime. There is no daytime TV yet." And they offered me an hour a day. They said, "Joe, we're going to give you an hour a day. What kind of show are you going to do?" I said, "Well," I go, "people talking, nose to nose, eyeball to eyeball, just talking." I said, "Joe, you're out of your mind. You can't do it. The word is television. You got to give them vision. You got to give them seltzer bottles, pratfalls, baggy pants. You got to give them burlesque skits. You can't just do a talk show." I said, "Well," because rock and roll was coming. I said, if I do a show of kids dancing to records." They said, "Now we know you're nuts. Who's going to watch kids dance to records?" Who comes along?
Dick Clark.
Dick Clark becomes a billionaire. But I defied them. I think I did what was the first pure, organic, from the bones TV talk show, and that was half a century ago or more.
Right, and a lot of people followed in your footsteps. In fact, you had Jay Leno on your show when he was a young comedian.
With black hair, and he was so
jet
young
black,
and bubbly and bouncy. He said, "Oh, my dream come true. I'm on the Joe Franklin show."
So Jay, did it come easily for you? I mean, so far as the big breakthrough when you felt you were no longer one of the crowd, or was it?
This is my big breakthrough. I grew up watching this show.
Elaborate. Don't stop now.
This is true.
Don't. You too, right?
I called my mother last night and I said, "I'm doing the Joe Franklin." She said, "Oh, yeah." She lives in Boston. See, they don't get the show in Boston.
Well, I gave the first exposure to it. I mean, it's endless. Barbra Streisand, Bette Midler, Woody Allen, Eddie Murphy, Al Pacino, Dustin Hoffman, Liza Minnelli, Bill Cosby. I mean, the list is endless. I think I discovered everybody.
Well, you broke a lot of careers, but a lot of comedians got their start on your show as well. Out of all those comedians, it's hard to pick a favorite, but what are a few of your favorite interviews from those days?
I always liked Gilbert Gottfried. He always broke us up with his shrieking. I think my favorite two would be Eddie Cantor and Bob Hope. Bob Hope was always so sly and slick, and Jerry Colon was always with him. Dorothy Lamour, even though she wasn't a comedian, she was funny. And Jack Benny.
Jack Benny.
One day Jack Benny goes to the White House carrying his violin case. So the security guard said, "Mr. Benny, what do you got in that case?" So he said something he probably shouldn't have said. So he said, I got a bomb." So the security man says, "Oh, thank God, I thought it might be your violin." So, I got a lot of those stories to tell. But it's been a rewarding career. A lot of the stars, when they see me around town now, they sort of walk on the other side of the street. They don't want to be reminded of the days when they were broke. But
Of
I guess that's
course.
human nature. Maybe it's shallow, but it's human nature. But a lot of them are still very friendly, but a lot of them aren't. So it's just, I had them when they were young and starting out, though, right? So I got no complaints.
Right. And one of my favorites was Groucho Marx.
Oh,
And I know you knew him real well and had him on your show.
many times. He scared me for a long time. I used to meet him in elevators, and he would scare me with that grim, dour, sour look. I never had a talent coordinator. I always did my own booking, but I was afraid to ask him. But one day I finally worked up the courage to ask him, and he was so nice. But there was some that really scared me. That I was never. I was afraid of Burt Law. Burt Law scared me. He looked always so. Fred Allen. Remember the radio comedian Fred Allen?
Oh, yeah.
And George S. Kaufman and a few like that. And later on, I found out after they were dead, they were only waiting to be invited onto my show. So I learned too late in life to be a little more aggressive, But Groucho Marx, at least, I got him on.
And isn't it true, I remember we were talking one time, you said that they claim that certain stars were never on a talk show, but they were actually on your talk show.
I saw a list in a magazine recently of people who never appeared on a talk show, and you're right. I forget. I know they mentioned some of the names I just mentioned, but I had everybody in the world except Greta Garbo. Greta Garbo, we were friends. We'd meet in theaters showing retrospectives of her movies, and we would smile, but she wouldn't come on the air. She wouldn't. I mean, she was offered a signed check to make another movie. She wouldn't go
Right.
anywhere. She retired, I think, at the age of 36. She made a movie called Two-Faced Woman. She said, "I don't like the way I look," and she walked away. And I made enough faces, what she said, and she walked away. But we were friends. But I mean, if anybody I would have loved to have would have been Greta Garbo. I had Marilyn Monroe. I had them all.
So who is your favorite over? I know it's hard to pick a favorite.
That's a fabulous question, Nick. I would say Bing Crosby. I always admired, I worshipped Bing as a divinity, practically. And the day that he walked toward me, flesh and blood, in my studio, I just melted.
It's interesting that I once read about a company called Bing Crosby Productions, where you produced Ben Casey and
a couple other series we had that went pretty well. Ben Casey was the biggest.
Hogan's Heroes, I think.
Hogan's Heroes ran and ran and ran, but
I always thought of being what you would call mechanically reproduced. I thought of being on radio, on TV, on records, on movies, on television. But when he walked toward me, I melted, and I think I did my all-time favorite interview that day with Bing Crosby. And I'll say a funny thing about Bing. Bing was not that romantic. He was kind of icy, kind of cold, kind of stuffy. But that day with me, he was so relaxed. He could have been any old-time vaudeville entertainer, So that was... He would tell his songwriters in the golden era of Hollywood, he would tell the songwriters, don't say the word "I love you" twice in one song. He would say, I mean, isn't that ironic that the most romantic balladeer of all time would tell the songwriters, don't say the word "I love you" twice? But that day with me, he was, maybe because his wife was on with his young wife.
Right.
He was showing off to Catherine Crosby at that time, But he was so great. The answer to that question would be Bing Crosby.